No further ado, we'll have Lewis Bishop come introduce our guest this week.
Thank you, sir. I'm happy to be here today and glad to be a part of a great community. And we have a speaker here, Byrd, who will be gracing us, telling us a little bit about what he's doing in the community that makes it a town and a great place. So, Byrd, you can kind of start making your way on up over here. He's got 3 boys he's raising. He's got steers, chickens, and goats. He's active in the community and the jamboree projects that are coming up for all that goes on with livestock. And he's also active in the church. Since he's pastor of the church, I guarantee you he's active in that. So, Oak Hill Baptist Church, come on up.
Thank you, Mr. Bishop. Hey, I want to thank you all for having me here today and allowing me to come and speak with you for a few moments. Tell you what, it's good to live in a community like ours in a small county where, as you're preparing to speak before the Rotary Club, Miss Julie York walks in with a pair of clippers for your show steer so that you need. And I told her I was speaking here today, and actually that was yesterday. I completely forgot, and she knew exactly where to come, how to find me, and bring me a Walmart bag full of clippers for our animals. So I'm thankful to be in Upshur County and here in Gilmer, Texas with all of y'all. Today I'm going to speak to you on really kind of 2 different subjects. They may appear to be opposites and extremes of one another, but I think it's informative. I hope it is to you, and I hope that you take something from it that you might not have known before we started here for lunch today. The first thing I want to talk to you about is an unpleasant topic no one wants to talk about, but it's sexual assaults of children. I will tell you that this is my 22nd year as a prosecutor serving the state, and in this time period, all we have done is seen an increase in this area of crime. This past summer that we just ended before school started, I had an unprecedented amount of even juvenile offenders. Unprecedented. All the way down to 7-year-old children that are committing these types of acts against other siblings and family members. It's really astonishing when you stop and think about that for just a few moments of how problematic that is. Our administrators, which there's many here in the room today, they see these things also in somewhat of a different capacity when there's outcries at schools and they're having to deal with those situations as well. But when those things come into the criminal justice system, they're difficult cases from the beginning. I will tell you that up front. They're hard cases. Hard meaning hard in taking that evidence, putting it in a package, and presenting it ultimately to a jury. Most of the time, well over 90% of the time, in my experience, the victims of these offenses are not random strangers. This is not someone that sits at the local park with a pair of binoculars as TV is dramatized. This is generally someone that the offender has a very close relationship with. Why is that? They need that type of relationship in order to manipulate and exploit the relationship. And they know the strengths and weaknesses of the victims, and they're very able to keep those things very secretive for a variety of reasons. It astonishes me, even my wife, when I told her some of the topics I was going to speak about here today. She says, I just don't understand how a mom couldn't know. And I understand that statement. I do. I understand why it's easy to make statements like that. But until you get into the minds of people like this that want to exploit children, you can't really fully understand it and how truly sophisticated and very smart they really are in order to carry out these crimes for a long period of time. I've brought a sampling of that to try to lead the discussion today from a 911 call. Happened on December the 5th of 2015, not in Gilmer, but in one of our communities. And this child was 14. She was going into her own bathroom to take a shower, and she looks under the door, much like you can see daylight under the door back there, and she sees a phone sticking up under the door. Well, that was her father that was recording her. She sees that. She had been experiencing for at least 2 years to that point in her life exploitation in the home. Mother was a worker, hard worker. Dad had a good job. They were active in the community. They were known among friends, and it truly did shock many when this came out. But when she got into the shower, she sees the phone. She left the shower, went into her room, called a friend. That friend encouraged her to get out of the house. She didn't know what else to do. So it's really cold this night. She got out the window of her home, out of her bedroom, and ran barefooted out into the woods. The recording is lengthy, but the part that I'm going to play for you, it's about 4 minutes. What you're going to hear is this child barefooted in the cold, running through the woods. She has recognized and seen that her father's come out of the home with a gun, had gotten into a truck, and was hunting her. You're going to hear that she is knocking on neighbors' doors, begging for help. I play this in the context for you to understand that we don't understand fully what's going on behind closed doors in people's homes. We can have guesses, we can make assumptions, but there's a lot of children that are hurting today. A lot of children that are being abused, both physically, emotionally, and even sexually. What you're going to hear is that ultimately law enforcement was able to arrive. But I want you to hear from this child's voice and understand this. What I've told you, the world did not know. She had lived with this for 2 years. The exploitation had been taking place in her own home, in her own bedroom. No teacher, no principal, no friend. No one knew, including an older sister, which I'll tell you about a little bit more about her in just a moment. So we're going to listen to this and then talk about this.
They're on their way, okay? If you can see him, Amanda? Can you see him, Charlotte?
So and it's hard to hear in the room with some of that in the recording. She's knocking on neighbors' doors. She had run into backyards and she's telling 911 that I'm in these people's yard, and she's banging on doors asking for help because her father is circling with a spotlight looking for her, and she had seen him come out with a gun. The law enforcement does arrive there. Ultimately, they make contact with the mother. Father is taken into custody and arrested, and the mother calls an older sister. The older sister was in high school at the time. She was with friends in Marshall ice skating at the ice skating rink. And when older sister came, Mom told the older sister what had happened, and she immediately broke down, very emotional, started crying, because what happened was she outcried the same things had been going on with her. In the same house, two sisters at different times, and neither one knew. Ultimately, he was tried. He received 165 years from the jury. He will die in prison. That's where he will spend the rest of his time on this side of eternity there. And rightfully so for what he did. You got a sampling of what that was, and those girls had to take the stand against their own father. Now remember, mother, father, in home, not a broken home. Both parents worked very good jobs. Both of the children were doing well at school. It wasn't Gilmer, but a school district in our county doing well, making good grades. And then this comes out where we learn for over 2 years this had been going on. Later during an interview with an investigator, he even admitted, not to all, but he did admit to exploiting both of the girls separately. He would not admit to everything, but he did make an admission to the things that he had done. That case, the girls were older. When we go to trial, they had, through counseling, been prepared mentally to be able to get on the witness stand to testify. They did that. Years go by. Approximately 3 years after the trial's over, one day they come to my office, and they wanted to know how it was, and they were mad, they were angry, upset at what Daddy done, had removed innocence that cannot be placed back. But they wanted to know how it was, if I could help them arrange a visit to the maximum security penitentiary where he was to see their father. They have still, because that's their dad, that relationship still exists. When you're dealing with these cases, again, I started with the difficulty and the complexity is children know that something's wrong, but they don't know who to tell or how to tell it without breaking up other relationships within the home, fear of retaliation against themselves. But when all the dust settles, that's still their parent, as bad as they were mistreated and as much harm as was done to them. And so getting victims to a point where they can not only outcry, but then after that, how we progress to prosecution of those cases, there's a process. That process is not quick. It takes time. It takes the intervention of professional counselors to work with those children. It takes a lot of effort from myself, my crime victim coordinator, in meeting with them, because how are you going to get a young girl to come in to talk to some bald-headed stranger for the first time and talk about very embarrassing things? So there's a process. You don't go into that the first time. The first time is just meeting and trying to develop some trust. But the victims have to know at the end of the day that somebody's going to be willing to stand up and make that argument and hold the line for them. Because if they don't have that faith and trust in the prosecutor, you're going to see a decline in the outcries. I say that for this reason. Prosecutor is important in the criminal justice system. There's going to be a day and time that someone else will be the prosecutor of Upshur County. Please think about who that will be and be prayerful about that, because and I'm not saying anytime soon, but there will be a day. I don't own it. I hold it in trust for you. It's not my office. If you go down there right now, there's not one thing on those walls in my office that belongs to me. because I don't want to claim ownership to something that I don't own. It's yours. I hold it in trust for you, and I try to do the best I can with the time I have there for victims like that. And that's the motivation that always keeps you moving forward, as hard as it is, so that they have a voice in a court of law. Last week, we had and it'll probably be in the Gilmer Mirror, maybe even tomorrow or Thursday, but a person by the name of Jonathan Parker. He had multiple counts against him in the indictment. He ended up pleading to a life sentence. And you might think, why would he do that? Well, here's why. Because he knew the consequence of not pleading to that one life sentence would result in a jury finding him guilty of multiple life sentences. And so therefore he pled and waived his appeal. But how do we get to that point? You have to have history and precedents established in the justice system so that people know. And all of our law enforcement, our crime advocates, our office, the Children's Advocacy Center, our professional counselors and therapists all have a role in the prosecution of these cases. And don't think that it's just some isolated event. There's always history, and there's usually a lot of grooming that takes place before the crime is committed by the perpetrator. So I'll transition from that into this. Attorney pro tem cases. I want to explain something. And under our law in the state of Texas, in 2019, the law changed. The law prior to 2019 was if a prosecutor in a county has a disqualification, meaning they're an eyewitness to a crime, they're the victim of a crime, they would be disqualified from prosecuting that. In the old days, prior to 2019, a judge from a county would appoint any lawyer. Okay? Any lawyer could be appointed. Doesn't have to be a prosecutor, somebody that's never sworn an oath to the state and upholding the oath of duty to seek justice, just a lawyer. You'll understand from our Attorney General from the state of Texas has been under indictment for 7 years. Collin County appointed some lawyers. They ran up bills that were mind-boggling. Okay? It would take me about 5 years to make the amount of money that they made in a few months to get nothing done, to be honest. Legislature looked at it and said, we don't like this, this is bad, and so they changed the law. The law now is if a prosecutor gets disqualified or recuses themselves in a county, the judge must appoint an elected district attorney from somewhere else in the state. I tell you that for this reason, to kind of bring this to light for you. Since that law has been changed, I've been appointed to a lot of counties. Being one of the senior prosecutors, or the senior prosecutor in the East Texas area at this point, I get a lot of appointments. I've handled a police officer in Cass County that went to jail for sexual assault of a victim, a stepdaughter, that had occurred 15 years before. I've been appointed to the Tyler defense lawyer that was representing the capital murder nurse who killed 4 people in the hospital and during the trial was soliciting a prostitute during the trial. I was appointed to handle that. He's been convicted. He still keeps his bar license, but he has been convicted of that crime. Earlier this year in Gregg County, I was appointed to try a sexual assault case against a brother and his half-sister. That resulted in a conviction and him going to prison over there. 2 weeks ago, I was assigned a capital murder in Gregg County on a man named Jermaine Wheat, which killed 2 women and has had a long criminal history with the criminal justice system. And as of yesterday, I received an appointment to handle the prosecution of Dr. Matt Hipke, a doctor out of Longview that is charged with multiple cases of aggravated sexual assault against his patients and clients. And there's been others. Just so you know, when an elected DA gets appointed in any other county, there's not 1 more cent paid by salary to the prosecutor. Okay? That's how the law changed. They looked at the exploitation in the Attorney General's case. They saw that that was an abuse, so they said, now we're just going to appoint prosecutors that are elected, voted by citizens, elected locally, to go handle these things around the area. And it doesn't per se cost you. Of course, the business in Upshur County still has to be handled, but the other counties do not pay. And so I think that that's important that people know that. And I'll say that leading into this. Currently, and this is not politics, this is just facts, and this is why I want you to know. Currently, there is a push in Austin through the Attorney General's office to garner additional prosecution powers in the state. They have tried under election fraud cases, and what's brought this on? You have some prosecutors elected in various parts of the state that intentionally choose not to prosecute certain crimes. I understand that. I don't agree with that, but elections have consequences. That's something locally that folks can handle. Because of that, we've had a knee-jerk reaction that we have now tried to gain election fraud case prosecution power in Austin. You can search our history of our country and our state, and there will never be a time that when you transfer local power to a government authority or a big power machine in Austin or Washington that things got better. Period. You'll never find it. Local control, local voters who have a say at the ballot box is always where we should remain. The Attorney General is upset about this and will be pushing for legislation this session. Now, know this, the Texas Constitution, it's important. The Constitution really matters and it's important, it ought to. It says clearly that all prosecution authority vests solely with the locally elected authority, period. There's going to be a push to try to get around and or amend the Constitution. That is bad for our state. I will be in Austin this year, and I've already made known, and I've written letters. I will be before subcommittees, and I will be before committees, and I'll be on the floor, it doesn't matter, testifying against this because that's wrong. Local power ought to rest with the local prosecuting authority elected by citizens. And if the citizens say, you know what, we don't like it, that's why I don't hang anything on the wall, because you could say, listen, it's time for you to go. It won't take long to get out. It's your office, it's not mine. But you've got the say in that. You've got the power, and that's where it ought to always be. And I don't like it. I've made it known to our authorities, but I tell you that as civic-minded citizens, you're here in this Rotary organization, this is important for you to know. This is happening. And don't think that that's because whenever that power is transferred, guess what? It never comes back the other way, and they never stop. They only want more. So I'm opposed to it completely. That's not political. It's just facts. It's the facts. And I think it's important that you know that. Even though we have to get appointed to handle these, and I'm appointed on a police officer right now in Marshall for official oppression. He's on paid administrative leave. I've been assigned the case. It's going to be tough. I mean, I can't get into it, got a camera, but it's going to be a situation that's going to require some time. These things happen as a result of that 2019 law change, but what caused that law to change, you need to know the background of the exploitation by certain lawyers that were billing and not getting the job done. I mean, you can't, that's just plain theft. You go get something and not do anything in return. Where I come from, that's called thievery. And my dad would have something to say to me about that. I can assure you. So that's where we are on those issues. But we have to get appointed on cases like this sometimes because, for instance, you've got a new elected DA going into Gregg County. He has prior defense cases. He cannot prosecute those cases. They're going to have to be assigned. That's why there's going to be some more signing, I think, or what I understand. But we're still going to take care of our people here in Upshur County, I can assure you. So I don't want you to think that sleep at the wheel here, because you folks matter and mean a lot to me, and this county means a lot to me. That's why I'm here. And I want to make sure to try to do the very best job I can. Not perfect, going to make mistakes, not intentionally, going to make mistakes, going to fall short sometimes of expectations. But again, it won't be for lack of effort. So let me ask any questions that you might have. I do have a little video to just close with, kind of funny, something a little different than sexual assault of children. But I want to let you ask me any question. It doesn't have to be on these subject areas.
You mentioned grooming.
Yes, sir.
Is that criminal?
Grooming's not. No, it's just part of the process that a person goes through. And generally, it's just trying to garner that level of trust. And once they get the trust, then they get them to a point of vulnerability where they're providing something to that victim needs or wants, to the point that they use that as a bargaining chip in order to exploit them. And then with the fear of this over here that you really need or want, it's going to go away if you don't continue. And a lot more often than not, what we're seeing now is through our, not just social media, but our electronic equipment. There's usually going to be some recordings, and then there's blackmail of theft. Blackmail that if you don't continue, then this is going to be sent out to people. Believe it or not, I've had defendants do that. Even though it's showing them committing a criminal offense, they've still sent it to parents even before. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. That's why this week the commissioners approved a new contract for our sheriff's office. We have not had dash cam videos, only body cams. You would be shocked to know how many people, and our mayor would probably agree with this, how many people, although they have the right to remain silent, won't exercise it. The doors are shut and they think no one's listening, and they'll talk through the window to somebody and confess to crimes. That has happened a lot. It's unbelievable, but we got to have that capability of recording it, and so they're going to be getting dash cam videos in their patrol cars, which is a good thing for us. That's a good question. Any others?
Will there be a vote on the transfer of power that you were talking about?
Oh, yes, sir. Yeah, our legislature, our folks here locally, our state representative in this area is going to be Cole Hefner, and then our state representative, our state senator, Brian Hughes. They're fully aware and they understand. I've made sure, but I haven't stopped there. I've sent it to other people. It's not just me. Other seasoned prosecutors in the state who understand the significance of this, they're working too with all of their local representatives. So as long as we keep working, and I don't want to get into it too much, but there's a big push from a political party that's really pushed a long ways one direction, and they're really behind it because they're mad to see folks in, I'll just call it Dallas, Houston, and Austin refuse to prosecute certain crimes and look the other way. I can agree with you that that was not a good policy for any prosecutor to have. That would be the equivalent of me walking in here and saying, look, I'm never prosecuting misdemeanor crimes. I'm just going to focus on felonies. Well, the misdemeanor crimes are just going to go out the roof overnight. And that's what you see happening, and that's not right or good for the criminal justice system. But local folks can have a say in that. Elections have consequences. Yes, sir.
Do you have any option when you're appointed to go to another county to do this? Is this something that would happen? Let's say if you're on the grand jury. Once you're on the grand jury, there's a length of time when you're not on the grand jury. Do you have lengths of times when you're not appointed?
That's a really good question. No. But further that, could I refuse? I could. But Mr. Marshall, the reason I know some of these cases, I know the significance of it, and I know how it needs to be handled right. I'm afraid if I didn't say yes, what might happen? I mean, the case in Gregg County earlier this year, I'll tell you, the reason the DA's office in Gregg County recused on that because the father threatened to kill the judge, the sheriff, burn the courthouse down. It was horrible. Well, I bring him in, and he and I, we get on what I consider a good foot. I bring a meeting with the victim. I'm preparing everything. I'm going above and beyond, making sure that they're informed of everything. That was one of their biggest complaints, not knowing things. So we did a really good job of that. Well, here we are on the verge of a trial, and he makes some TikTok videos, and he threatened my life. Well, that's not the first time that has happened in my life, but I knew how to handle that, and we handled it in a way that he was placed under a gag order. a little bit of contempt of court issued against him. And when he was on the stand, he wasn't so tough anymore when I was playing the TikTok videos when he was threatening me and asking him to state very clearly on the record how he was going to kill me, that he was saying he was going to do. And anyway, we got through it. But when I first started, within the first 5 years, I wouldn't have known how to handle that as well as I do now 22 years later.
But would there be, on these sexual assault cases, is there, in what you played, I mean, I know it's not all broken homes and all that, but is there a time, during the day, are these kids, most of these kids are left unattended, have to take care of themselves? What do you see in that arena?
Yes, and you know, you do. You see that, not all broken homes, but you'll have homes that by paper is not broken, but yet it is broken on the inside. What I mean by that is there's not involvement and not staying involved. If you just go out to a restaurant and you look at a family with kids and look at what happens, just observe for yourself. They're going to have cell phones, there's no talking, and they're looking and texting or doing whatever they're doing on their phones. That lack of communication, the cell phone is really taking over and running the homes now, from what I see, and there's just lack of communication going on and awareness even with their own children's lives. Just being involved. Kids need love, they need it, and they're going to gravitate to the person that's going to provide that. And somebody that's willing to exploit a child, they see those things. They recognize it, so they step into the gap. And they provide the need that child has at the time, only to later one day knowing they're going to exploit them down the road. I mean, we had a case, I had first, about 2008. You're talking about the salt of the earth, person, family, everything, deacon at a church, president of the organizations, this and that. Anyway, come to find out, wife had suspected that the husband was cheating, left a recording device under a bed. She goes to work, comes home for lunch, gets the device, pushes play, only to hear her husband sexually abusing their daughter. Went to the school, got the young lady out of class. At that point, she was 14 or 15, as I recall, and said, "How long has this happened?" And she just broke down right there. Kids are carrying things within them. So these, and I know there's many in this room that support kids and athletics and FFA, and things that kids need, those good outlets. They can get their attention that they're looking in those areas. And the more we do to support them and the more we love up on them. But kids they'll shock you, the amount of kids. And I tell my kids at church all the time, I say, look, you need someone to come talk to. You just need to make sure you let kids know you're available. You're available. Open door, available to them. There's a lot of educators in the room that work with kids. I've got a soft place in my heart for children and the kids of our community. So, but yes, it's all sorts of homes. All sorts of homes. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Maybe I didn't understand, but you said the cell phone is running?
Yes, sir.
Or ruining the home?
Both. It's good observation. Yeah, good observation. That's true. Very
Billy,
true.
I have a question. Do you feel like there's more cases in step families than there is like a?
Well, I'll tell you, I'll use this one as an example. I can't say that there's more in step versus biological. I can't say that. But I will tell you I'm going to use this as an example. The case that pled to life last week, that was a situation where he had married a person that had a daughter from a previous marriage. He had his own biological daughter from a previous marriage. He ultimately told his wife and told law enforcement that under no circumstance would he ever think about doing this to his biological daughter, but the stepdaughter, that was okay. So, I'm sure everybody's really excited about, maybe I'll bring something more cheerful next time. You may never have me back again. Thank y'all again very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Billy. It's always a pleasure to have you here. You know, it is great to live in a county. A friend of mine and I were having a conversation the other day, and we were talking about some of the things that have happened, some of the prison terms and such that people have been getting. You know, between our district attorney, judges, even those who serve on juries, doesn't look to me like that Upshur County is a good place to do business if you're a criminal. Amen. And I'm thankful for that.
Amen. Thank you.
Is there any other?